Hello everyone, it's Carrie at Inky Bee Journals and Ephemera. Welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time visiting my channel, hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. So today we are continuing on with the Florals and Foliage notebook, and today we are up to part 5 and we are adding covers and closure. So the front decorative cover, the back decorative cover, and the closure. And this is what our closure will look like. For those who are new to the channel and wondering what this notebook is all about, this is what we're making. The design is a little bit different in the digitals, but that's okay. We have bound the signature in with these split pin paper fasteners. Some people might know these as brads. These are the round top ones, not the flat ones that are typically known in paper crafting. These ones are the ones that you might associate more with office works or with office items. And the closure is just a little self-adhesive Velcro dot. It has one signature in it with some plain pages. This is a notebook, however you could use it as a journal if you want to. And inside the front and the back covers we have a angle pocket in here. So that's what we're making. So today we will use this decorative paper to put a front cover on, a back cover, and we will make a little closure out of this little off-cut piece of cardstock here. So without further ado, let's get started. Set those aside for a moment. So I've actually printed 2 of these off. It's exactly the same image, and the reason I've done that is because on the back cover I want to have the same image as I have on the front cover, and that's just because in these particular digitals I was finding it hard to find a image that I liked for the back cover, so I'm just going to use the same image twice. Now, when I printed mine off, I have to print mine with borders on them. That's just a printer setting. So if you are able to, on your settings, to set yours so that you don't have the borders, then that's great, because that's one less step that you have to then do. Because I can't print borderless, I have already gone ahead and cut the borders off mine. So now we can move forward with it. So I'm going to put one of these aside and we're going to start making a front cover. So all I'm going to do for this is I'm just going to, you can measure this specifically with a ruler if you want to, but if you know me on my channel, you know that I tend to do what I like to call lazy measuring, and that's for those of us who don't like to measure too much all the time. So I'm just going to put this on the top here, and I'm just going to move it around until it looks to me, just by eye, that the border I have across the top, down the side and across the bottom all look relatively the same. It doesn't matter if it's not 100% exact, but just try to get it somewhat similar all the way around. And when you think you have it where you want it, you can just make a marking. Now I'm just going to use my pencil, and where the edge of the spine side is here, I'm just going to come in by about 1/8 of an inch, because that the rest of the other 3 sides are roughly that wide. So I reckon if I mark it about there, just to the very edge of where this flower is here, so that when I cut this straight down, the brown background will give me a border down this spine side that will be very much the same as what the other 3 sides have. So now that I've marked that, we can just move the book aside. I'm just going to bring in my little paper trimmer, and I'm going to lift this up. This is a little guillotine trimmer, and I'm going to slide this underneath this little clear piece here, and I'm going to slide it across until this little marking that I have is right on the edge of the metal edge. And I need to make sure that the top edge of this is right up here at the, right up against the ridge here, and that the pencil marking we made is right on the edge of this metal piece. And have a look down the bottom, and if it looks relatively straight across the bottom, then there's a pretty good chance you've got a straight line. Just line that up as best as you can. Hold your fingers down, a little bit of pressure on this clear piece, but just making sure that your fingers don't go over this clear piece so that you don't cut your fingers. So just put a little bit of pressure there, and that just helps to hold this page nice and still. And then we're just going to pull it down and cut that off. So we'll hang on to this because it's plenty big enough to do something else with another time. So here's the piece that we're going to use. And I'm just going to move this aside for a moment. We're going to bring this back in, and we're just going to do a quick test to make sure that this is going to fit nicely. And yeah, I think that's not too bad. And you have it straight to Kaz. So I hope I'm getting this straight, because I'm just going to stand up for a moment, so I'm sorry if you see the camera or the table make a bit of a wobble. It happens when I move, but I'm just going to stand up so that I can look over this piece a little bit better, and that will help me center it a little bit better. And yeah, I think that's looking better. So we've got that piece ready. Now we're going to do exactly the same with this second piece. So I'll put this piece aside. We're going to turn this over to the back. It should be much the same, but I'm just going to roughly measure it. We're going to do the same thing. We're just going to put a line there. We're going to move this aside. We're going to bring in the paper trimmer. Lift this up. Once again, we need to make sure that the top edge of this is right against the top of the ridge here, and that this little marking is right against this metal edge here, right on the edge of that metal edge. Across the bottom to make sure that it looks relatively straight, which it does. Press down and pull the lever down. Again, we've got another piece like this, so we have 2 pieces like this, so we'll find something else to do with that later. We can put this aside, and we should have a piece here that should fit nicely on the back here, which it does. So the next thing we need to do with these pieces is we need to glue these down. Now, the glue that you use is up to you. Personally, I like to make sure that I'm not using something that's got too much of a high water content in it, because when you're dealing with paper, you might find that if it has too much of a high water content in it, it can tend to cause your paper to wrinkle a little bit, and sometimes it can actually cause it to tear, and that can damage your project. So just be a little bit wary of that. My glue that I'm using is art glitter glue. I just have mine in this little bottle, but I will put a link in the description box below if you are interested in the glue that I'm using. You could also use a glue stick if you want to use a glue stick, or you could also use, I wouldn't really necessarily use something like this, like your snail tapes, because you might find that it won't stick for a very long time. You might be able to use it in conjunction with another glue though. Likewise, if you are using something like tear tape or double-sided tape, it can work, but over time, if you want to keep this for any length of time, you might find that it can react to the paper over time and leave like black lines. And if you can imagine having black lines through your image here, you might find it starts to ruin the look of your project. So if you want to avoid that, I would suggest using a glue stick or a wet glue that doesn't have too much of a high water content. Yes, you can use a fabric glue like Fabri-Tac or Fabrifix or something like that. Any sort of fabric glue would be fine because it doesn't have water in it as far as I know. I am going to use my art glitter glue, so we're just going to glue this down. So I'm just going to grab an old catalogue and I'm going to turn this piece over. I'm going to take the pin out of my glue and I'm just going to run a bead of glue. I'm just going to put a dot up here and make sure that we're flowing, which we are. And we're just going to run a bead of glue down the side, close to the edge but not over the edge if you can help it. Turn it round, continue another bead across the bottom, turn it round again, another bead up the other side, turn it again and another bead of glue down the other side. And then I'm just going to hold it carefully on the edge and I'm just going to give it a zigzag across, and then we're going to bring this in and we're going to place this down. Now if you are using a double stick tape, you will find this will glue very quickly, so you won't get a lot of time to adjust anything. But if you are using a wet glue like I am, you should be able to have just enough time to adjust a little bit. And I'm just going to go over that. Now I'm just going to run over it with my bone folder just to help make sure I've got a good contact between my paper and my top paper and my background paper. It helps to spread the glue out and even this out. Just going to run around the edge to make sure that I've got all seepage, and there we have a front cover. Now we're going to repeat this process on the back, so we can bring the second piece in and we can run some glue down here, run some glue down here, run some glue down here. And some glue down here. And we're just going to do a zigzag like that. Bring this back in. Make sure you have your image the right way up. And try to line this up as best as you can. Going to run over that with my cloth just to try and get any excess seepage. Run over that with my bone folder to help flatten out that glue and get good contact between my papers. Like that. And there we have a front and back cover on. Now to make, I'll just move this aside. To make the closure, I'm sorry, the camera may wobble when I draw myself towards the table. I'm just using an off-cut piece of the same brown card that I made the cover background with. And this is, I think it's about 2 inches wide. Have a look here. Yes, it's 2 inches wide, and it is approximately I think it is 3 3/4 wide. Now that's not a set size that you have to use. I like to make my closures approximately 1 inch wide, so that's why I have made this 2 inches wide, because we will fold it in half, and by folding it in half I'm doubling the strength of the cardstock. So we'll do that first. As for how long you have it, well, that sort of depends on how big of a loop you want here. I don't tend to need a real big loop there because I'm just using these as just a notebook. You can use them as a journal, but just bear in mind, if you are going to be filling these pages with pockets and various types of ephemera, your signature will gain dimension, and as you gain dimension you will find you will need to have a little bit more room at the side here for these pages to span out a bit. So you might want to make yours a little bit wider, a little bit longer, because you need to put it back into the cover here by roughly 1 inch to give it plenty of hold, so that when you do this you're not going to have it right on the edge where it can start to pull off easily. So we're just going to take our piece here and we're going to fold it in half. Now, if you want to, you can get yourself a little scoreboard or any sort of scoreboard, and you can place your piece in like this and get your stylus, and you can, now I've got this at 2 inches. I'm just going to take this off because this is not the one that I'm using and it's in the way. Now I realise this is probably hard for you to see these because it is not highlighted, but this is 2 inches long and I want to score it at 1 inch, which is down the middle. So I'm just going to score at 1 inch like that. Then we can move this and we can fold this over in half, and I'm just going to go over that with my bone folder just to make sure that that's down nice and crisp. Now I'm not a great fan of this little scoreboard because I don't think it scores evenly very well, and I can tell that because when I've scored it 1 inch, there's a tiny little edge here that is over the other side, and to me that means it's not scored it directly in the center. So to fix this little problem, if you have that problem, just go ahead and cut off that tiny little excess, because it's not important that you do have it exact. So we're left with a piece folded in half like this, and what we will be doing is we need to glue it back here on the back in the center, and then we need to bring it round, and we will put a Velcro self-adhesive Velcro dot just here, so this will come round and it will stick there like that. But before we do that, what we're going to do is just glue down the inside here, because we need to make this a little bit stronger than just the thickness of one side of cardstock. So we'll double it up by folding it in half and gluing it down like that. And I'm just going to go over that with the bone folder again. And I'm just going to put the pin back in my glue for a while. Now, if you want to, and you don't have to, I'm just going to round these 4 corners, which is what I've done on this one. I've just rounded these corners on the front, and I've done the same on the back. You can do it by using your scissors if you like. I'm just going to use my little 3-way corner rounder. I will put a link for one of these in the description box if you're interested. And I'm just going to place the corner in the slot, and if it's easier for you, you can turn it upside down like this so that you can see underneath, and you can put the corner in the slot here until you see the corner in the triangle here, and then you press down on this lever here and it will cut that little corner for you, round that little corner. And you can do the same on the other corners. So you have 2 rounded corners at this end. We can do the same on this side. So we have 4 little rounded corners, and your tiny little pieces will fly all over the place when you do it upside down like that, but never mind, that's why we have a vacuum cleaner, isn't it? So now you can either leave it like this, or you can decorate it further. Now with this piece I just used, with this one I just used a piece of digital offcut, so we might do that again. So I might just use a piece of one of these that we had before, and I don't really know which piece because it's going to, the design's not going to show a great deal, but I might just take a piece across from the bottom. So what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to place this on here in the same way we did with the cover, to imagine that we have a little border of the brown around the edge, and then I'm just going to get my pencil and I'm just going to mark where I think that border would be there, and I'm going to do the same here across the bottom, so that when we cut this down it will fit within this brown piece with a brown border around the edge. So I'll move that aside. We'll bring this little trimmer in again, and remembering we have a little line just here and we have a little line just here. So Again, we're going to make sure this edge is across the top, and we'll line our little marking up on the edge of the metal piece, which I think is about there. Press this down. We can move this over, and there is one piece, but we need to cut where we have this other little marking. So we're going to lift this up again, slide this under the clear piece, put this top edge against the top ridge, and this little marking here on the edge of this metal piece. Hold that nice and still, and we're just going to cut that. So if we have a look here, this should be about the right size, and that gives us a little brown border all the way around the edge. So we can move this aside, and I'm just going to use my little paper rounder again, corner rounder, and we're just going to do the same thing on all four corners, exactly the same way as we did on this piece. If you're using a particularly thin paper, you might want to put another piece of paper underneath, or a little bit of cardstock underneath, just to give it a little bit of thickness, because if it's too thin, it will find it a little bit hard to cut through, and it may not work very well. So just bear that in mind. So now that we've cut this, we can glue this down, because we now have a nice little border all the way around the edge. So now we can glue this piece down. So we can turn this over. I'm just going to bring in my glue paper, and I'm just going to run some glue down here. Just going to put the pin back in my glue, and we're just going to glue this down. I'm going to pick this up to do it. Just move that round as much as you need to, as quickly as you can, because some glues will set up quicker than others, and we're just going to glue that down. And I'm just going to go over that with my bone folder, just like that, and just go over that with my cloth to make sure I've got any seepage. Now we just need to give it a little bit of a rounding sort of a shape, so I just gently, very gently manipulate that. If you have something round, now I have a glue bottle here, sorry about that, I have a glue bottle here, and I'm just going to gently wrap this around like that and give it a little bit of a just a little bit of a tug to kind of encourage it to go around nicely. And as you can see, it just gives it a nice little rounding shape. So just take your time to manipulate it around a little bit, because that's what we need to get that nice little rounding shape. Once we have that, we can just test it. So you can just place it roughly where you think it needs to be, and I think it needs to be roughly there. And you can fold it around like this, and imagining this has got a little bit of dimension in it. So it will glue on and it will look like this. And that gives it a little bit of ability to fan out if there's a little bit of dimension in there, and still have a little bit of looping at the side. which allows it to have that expansion. Now, as for glue, you can use a hot glue. I like to use this E6000 because I like to make sure it's got a really super strong stick to it, because as time goes on, when you're opening and closing, some glues like glitter glue, maybe even Fabri-Tac, glue stick, I wouldn't think glue stick on its own would be strong enough. Double-sided tape might be strong enough, but can come loose over time. So again, this is why I like to use the E6000, E7000, maybe even some sort of other what do you call it, dear me, my brain today, super glue would work, but just make sure that you're careful what you're letting it stick to, because you don't want to stick your fingers permanently. Now, I'm going to turn this over, and I reckon I'm going to sit it about there. So I'm going to open this glue. And I'm going to place glue under here, and I'm going to place glue so that it covers about 1 inch square. So about there, and I'm going to put a fairly reasonable amount on here because we want a good stick. Okay. Put that aside. Now, I'm going to glue this down in the middle, and I am going to try and get this as straight as I can, about there. And I do like to hold it just for a moment, enough for it to start grabbing. Now with the E6000, it's one of those glues that does need time to cure, but once it has, it is rock solid, and that makes it sturdy for this particular part of the book making, because it will get wear and tear as it opens and closes a lot. So we can avoid too much of that by having a good strong glue under it. And what we need to do is, when this comes over like this, it will stick just here. So I have a self-adhesive sticky dot here ready to go. So I'm just going to peel the back off one side, and I'm just going to stick it down to the inside of this closure at the end. About there. If you want to ensure that this definitely doesn't come off, you can put some extra glue behind it if you want to, but it is self-adhesive and it is fairly sticky, and so far I haven't had trouble with it, but you could always put some extra glue on for extra insurance. And then you can peel the backing off the other side, and you can just fold this round and stick this down like that. give it a good press. So the best thing you can do is let this just set up for a while. It may take a good day or so of drying, but once you've got that dried, it ends up looking like this. So you can open and close it, and it will be a lot stronger on the back. So that's really, I mean, I can give that a good tugging now, and that's not going to peel off. Whereas with glitter glue or something like that, it may potentially do that. So that's why I do it that way. But it is pretty sturdy now. That's not going to fall off in a hurry. But this allows the book to expand. So if you go and put, this has just got plain pages in it, but if you go and put pockets and different types of ephemera in there and things, you might find, well, you will find that this will gain some dimension, which will thicken, it will mean that these will expand, and you need to give it that little bit of ability to do that. So once this is dried, it will be finished, but it is practically finished now. It's just a matter of letting that dry. You can go ahead and embellish the front of these further if you want to. I'm not going to do that, but that's just a personal choice thing. You can ink around the edges if you want to. I haven't done that because I have got a brown background and inking really wasn't necessary, but again, that's a personal choice thing. If you want to ink, you can. If you want to embellish in other ways, you can certainly do that. If you want to add a little tassel up here, a little spine dangle or something, you certainly can do that. If you didn't want this style of closure, you could always just put a bit of ribbon or something around to tie around and hold it that way. But this is just a simple little notebook that can be used for whatever. You can use it as a notebook, you can use it as a type of journal, list making, event making, anything you like really. If you're not comfortable with this, you can just put something like a decorative tape, washi tape or something over that, just to hide the way this looks here. If you're not comfortable with the way that is, then you can certainly cover that up. But that's the book that we have made, and so that is the end of this particular series. In the next video, what I might do is just do a quick flip through of both of these little books, and yeah, then we'll move on to something new on the channel. So I hope you like this series. If you haven't seen parts 1 to 4 so far, I will put a link in the description box below, all the way down at the very bottom below all the other links. There will be a link for a playlist titled Notebook Tutorials, and all the previous parts to this series, and today's part as well. Today's video will also be in that playlist, and any future notebooks that I make will also be in that playlist. So yeah, I hope you give this a go. They're not too difficult, and they're just these type of binding just allows you to be able to, these can be opened again if you want to add pages, or you want to take pages away or take them out, decorate them, put them back in if you wanted to do that. So that's something you might find these useful for as well. So yeah, I hope you have a go, and you enjoy what you're making, and yeah. So as I said, if you like this video, please consider giving me a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, please consider subscribing. YouTube can send you a notification when I put another video out for you. Until next time, thank you so much for watching. Please stay safe out there, and I'll see you next time. Bye.